The moment the giant cowboy dropped to one knee and pressed his hand against her stomach, the whole room went still, like something no one dared to name had just begun. Caleb's breath caught, rough and uneven, as the lantern flickered against the wooden walls. Naomi didn't move. Her fingers stayed curled at her sides, knuckles pale while the faint creak of the floorboards echoed beneath him. Outside, the wind dragged across the dry fence, slow and restless, as if waiting for an answer. Neither of them had spoken yet. Tell me, what would you have done in that moment? The wind came early to Red Butte that day, carrying a fine red grit that settled into the seams of doors and the corners of a person's mouth. By noon, the yard behind Mercer's stables looked like a faded painting. Sun-bleached boards, dry earth, and a handful of men gathered in a loose circle that had no kindness in it. Naomi Hayes stood in the middle of that circle with her hands at her sides. Her dress had been clean that morning. It wasn't now. Dust clung to the hem, to the creases at her elbows, to the small place near her collar where sweat had darkened the fabric. She kept her back straight. It was the only thing she had left to keep. The horse lay in the shade of the corral fence, its front leg twisted wrong. It breathed hard through its nose, a low sound that made a person uneasy if they listened too long. Clyde Mercer wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and spat into the dirt. "You were the last one in that stall," he said, not loud, but clear enough for every man there to hear. "Now look at him." Naomi didn't answer. She had learned that words, in a place like this, often did more harm than silence. "I asked you something," Mercer went on, stepping closer. His boots pressed deep into the dirt with each step. "Did you touch that horse?" "I fed him," she said. Her voice came out even. "Same as every morning." A few men shifted. One of them let out a short laugh that didn't carry any humor. "Fed him," another repeated. "That's one way to put it." Mercer's eyes stayed on her. "That animal was worth more than this whole yard," he said. "And now he's finished. So you'll pay for it." Naomi looked at the horse, then back at Mercer. "I don't have that kind of money." "Then you'll work it off," he said. "Every day, every hour, until I say you're done." Someone behind her moved. A hand pressed against the back of her shoulder, forcing her down. Her knees hit the dirt harder than she expected. The impact sent a small cloud of dust up around her, dry and choking. "Better get used to the ground," the man said. "Looks like you'll be seeing a lot of it." A boot slid out in front of her just as she tried to shift her weight. It caught her ankle. She pitched forward, hands breaking her fall, palms scraping against the hard-packed earth. The taste of dust filled her mouth. Laughter followed, loud this time, rolling through the yard like it had been waiting for a reason. Naomi pushed herself up slowly. She didn't rush it. Rushing would only give them more to look at. Her fingers were shaking, but she curled them into her palms until they stilled. "Get the rope," Mercer said. One of the men turned toward the tack room. Another stepped closer, already reaching for her arm. That was when the voice came. "Leave it." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut across the yard clean as a blade. The man reaching for Naomi stopped first. Then the others followed, like something had passed through them all at once. Bootsteps sounded on the boards near the stable door. Slow, even, not a man in a hurry. Naomi lifted her head. He stood just inside the shade, tall enough that the doorway seemed smaller for it. Dust clung to the shoulders of his coat, the kind that came from long roads and wind that didn't let up. His hat cast a shadow over his eyes, but not enough to hide where he was looking. At her. Not at Mercer. Not at the horse. Not at the men who had formed that circle. Just her. Clyde Mercer drew himself up. "This ain't your concern, Ward," he said. The man stepped forward into the light. Caleb Ward. The name moved through the yard without being spoken again. Folks in Red Butte knew it well enough. He didn't answer Mercer right away. He reached into his coat, pulled out a folded stack of bills and held it out. What was the horse worth? Mercer hesitated. Just for a second. That's not the point. Caleb's hand didn't move. What was it worth? A longer pause this time. 300. Caleb counted without looking down. The sound of paper against paper seemed too loud for the space. He held the money out again. Mercer took it, slower than a man usually would. The yard went quiet. Caleb's gaze shifted, just slightly, back to Naomi. Untie her, he said. No one argued. The man with the rope stepped back. Another moved away from her shoulder. The circle opened without anyone saying it should. Naomi stayed where she was for a moment longer. The dirt had left marks across her hands, her dress, the side of her face. She brushed none of it away. Not yet. Then she stood. Caleb didn't offer a hand. He didn't reach for her. He just waited. She walked toward him, each step measured, steady, like the ground might give way if she didn't place her feet just right. When she reached him, he turned, not back to the men, not to Mercer, toward the open road beyond the yard. Come on, he said. That was all. Naomi glanced once over her shoulder. The men were still there. Mercer held the money like it might disappear if he loosened his grip. No one laughed now. She turned back and followed. The wind picked up again as they stepped out past the fence line, carrying the dust of Red Butte behind them. It settled on her shoulders, in her hair, in the small space between one breath and the next. She didn't look at him. He didn't look back. But the space between them felt different than anything she had known in that yard. Not safe. Not yet. Just quieter. And that, for the first time that day, was enough. The road out of Red Butte ran dry and narrow, cutting through low hills where the grass had long since given up trying to stay green. The wind followed them for a while, then fell behind, leaving only the steady sound of boots on dirt and the creak of leather. Caleb Ward walked a few steps ahead, his pace even, not looking back to check if she followed. Naomi kept up, not because he asked her to, because stopping didn't seem like an option she could return to. They reached the ridge near sundown. The land opened wide there, stone rising through the soil in jagged lines, like the earth had been split and left that way. A fence ran crooked along the edge, patched in places with boards that didn't quite match. Beyond it sat the house. It was larger than she expected. 2 stories, timber darkened by years of weather. The porch sagged slightly on one side. A lantern hung by the door, unlit. No smoke came from the chimney. Caleb pushed the gate open. The hinge gave a long, tired groan. Inside, the yard held no clutter. No scattered tools, no forgotten buckets, just space. Swept clean in a way that suggested habit, not care. He crossed the porch without pausing and opened the door. Naomi stepped in behind him. The air inside was still. It carried the faint smell of wood, cold iron, and something older that had settled deep into the walls. A table stood in the center of the room, bare except for a tin cup turned upside down. 2 chairs, a stove in the corner with a thin layer of ash inside. No pictures, no rugs, no signs of anyone staying long enough to make it a home. Caleb set his hat on a hook by the door. Room's through there, he said, nodding toward a narrow hallway. Second door on the left. Naomi didn't move right away. She took in the floorboards, the way they had been worn smooth along one path, and left rough everywhere else. The window above the sink had a crack running down one corner, patched with a thin strip of cloth. You can leave when you want, he added. It wasn't said like a warning, or an invitation, just a fact laid out between them. She nodded once. All right. The room he gave her was small but clean. A narrow bed, a wooden trunk at the foot, a single window looking out toward the back pasture. The glass there was clearer. Someone had taken the time to wipe it down. She set her things on the trunk and stood for a moment, listening. No voices, no movement, just the wind moving along the side of the house. That night, she found a sack of flour in the pantry, still half full, a jar of beans, salt in a folded paper. She worked without asking, measuring by hand, lighting the stove with a strip of kindling she found stacked near the wall. By the time Caleb came back in from the yard, the smell of something warm had settled into the room. He stopped just inside the door. Not far. Just enough to notice. Naomi didn't turn. She stirred the pot once, then set the spoon down. There was food, she said. Didn't seem right to let it sit. He crossed to the table and pulled out a chair. Sat down. No, he said after a moment. Didn't. They ate in silence. The kind that didn't press in, but didn't ease either. Just there, like another piece of furniture neither of them had chosen. Later, she found a loose hinge on the back door. The screws had worn thin in the wood. She took them out, wrapped the threads in a strip of cloth, and set them back in place. The door closed tighter after that. In the morning, she woke before the sun reached the ridge. The air held a bite to it. She stepped outside with a bucket and found the well by the side of the house. The rope was rough against her palms, worn from use. When she brought the water in, Caleb was already up, sitting at the table, a cup of coffee in front of him, untouched. He glanced at the bucket, then at her. Well's stiff, he said. It is, she answered. Still pulls. He gave a small nod. They worked that day without speaking much. He along the fence line, replacing a broken rail with a board that didn't quite fit but held. She in the kitchen, then the yard, then back again. Each moving through the space like it had been theirs longer than it had. Near noon, she saw it. Caleb had leaned against the fence post, one hand braced against the wood. His shoulders rose once, then again. A cough followed, short, sharp. He turned away from the open field as if that might hide it. There was a small stain on his sleeve when he lowered his arm, darker than dust. He wiped it once, then straightened. When he turned back, she had already gone inside. That afternoon, a wagon rolled up the path, slow and steady. The driver, an older man with a gray beard and a hat pulled low, climbed down with a grunt. "Ward," he called. Caleb stepped out to meet him. Naomi stayed near the doorway, hands resting against the frame. "Brought your order," the man said, patting the side of the wagon. "Flour, coffee, same as usual." His eyes shifted past Caleb, landing on Naomi. They didn't linger, just long enough to take note. "You got help now," he said. "For a time," Caleb answered. The man nodded. "Well, place might breathe a little easier for it." He handed over a folded receipt, paper worn soft at the edges. Caleb glanced at it, then tucked it into his coat without unfolding it. Before climbing back up, the man leaned in slightly. "Still the same?" he asked, quieter. Caleb didn't answer right away, then, "Same." The man gave a small hum, like he'd expected nothing else. "You take care then." When the wagon rolled away, the dust it left behind settled slower than the rest. That evening, Naomi lit the lamp before the sun had fully set. The light spread across the table, catching the edge of the tin cup, the worn grain of the wood. Caleb came in, set his gloves down, and paused near the doorway. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he stepped inside. And the house, for reasons neither of them named, felt a little less empty than it had the day before. The change didn't come all at once. It moved in small ways. A cup left out where there had never been two. A chair pulled closer to the table. The sound of footsteps crossing the floor at different hours. Naomi worked early, before the sun reached the ridge. She kept her hands busy. Water from the well, fire in the stove, bread set to rise under a cloth that had been folded and unfolded so many times it no longer held its shape. Caleb kept to his rhythm. Fence posts, tack repairs, checking the far pasture where the ground dipped and held what little rain they got. They spoke when it made sense, no more than needed. One morning she set a tin cup near his elbow before he sat down. Steam curled up from it, carrying a faint scent that wasn't just coffee. Caleb noticed. He always noticed. "What's in it?" he asked. "Just something to settle the chest," she said, not looking at him. "If you want it." He took the cup, didn't smell it first, didn't hesitate. He drank. That was how it began. A few leaves crushed between her fingers, roots shaved thin with the edge of a knife, water brought to a low simmer until the air held a softer note beneath the usual smell of wood smoke. She didn't explain. He didn't ask. Days passed. The wind shifted. The mornings came a little colder. Caleb still worked long hours, but he stopped leaning against the fence post so often. The cough came less. When it didn't bend him the same way. Naomi saw it. She said nothing. By the end of the week, old Ben Carter's wagon came again, wheels grinding slow up the path. Ben climbed down, same as before, same hat, same careful way of looking without staring. "You look different," he said to Caleb. "Do I?" Caleb answered. Ben shrugged. Less worn. His eyes moved just once to Naomi, who stood near the doorway with a sack of flour resting against her hip. "Word travels," Ben added, quieter now. "Folks down in town got ideas." Caleb didn't ask what kind. Ben didn't say more. But when he handed over the folded receipt this time, his fingers lingered a moment longer than needed. "You mind yourself," he said. Not to Caleb, to Naomi. The wagon rolled off, dust lifting slow behind it. 2 days later, the sheriff came. Doyle Harris rode up mid-morning, his horse stepping careful over the uneven ground. He didn't call out, just dismounted and tied the reins to the post like he planned to stay long enough to make it matter. Caleb met him on the porch. Naomi stayed inside, hands resting on the edge of the table. She could hear the low murmur of their voices through the open door. "Been hearing things," the sheriff said. "Folks always do," Caleb answered. A pause. Boots shifting on wood. "They say you're keeping company," Harris went on. "Say she's been fixing you drinks, special ones." Silence. Naomi's fingers tightened against the table edge. "Is that so?" Caleb said at last. "You know how it sounds," Harris replied. "Man starts failing, then suddenly he ain't. People look for a reason." Caleb leaned one shoulder against the post. "You come all this way for a reason, or just the sound of your own voice?" Another pause. Longer this time. Harris exhaled. "Just making sure nothing's out of order." "Everything here's mine to keep in order," Caleb said. The sheriff let that sit, then gave a short nod, turned, and stepped off the porch. As he passed the doorway, his eyes flicked inside. Met Naomi's for a fraction of a second. Not unkind, not friendly either. Just measuring. He rode off without another word. That night, the wind came harder. It pushed against the walls, rattled the loose board near the back corner. Naomi stood at the stove, stirring slow, steady. Caleb sat at the table, hands wrapped around the cup she had given him. "You don't have to stay," he said suddenly. She didn't turn. "You said that before." "I meant it." "I know." The spoon moved in the pot, once, twice. Outside, something creaked against the fence. She set the spoon down. "That doesn't change anything," she said. Caleb didn't answer. Later, when the lamp burned low, Naomi stepped outside to throw out the water she had used for washing. That was when she saw it. A faint glow at the bottom of the hill. Not one light. Several. Moving. She stood still, the bucket hanging from her hand. The glow grew stronger, shapes forming around it. Men, more than a few. Voices carried up the slope, broken by the wind. Naomi set the bucket down. Inside, Caleb had already stood. The sound of boots on the porch, slow, measured. She reached the door before he did. For a moment, her hand rested on the wood. Then she opened it. The wind hit first. Cold, sharp. The lights below flickered, torches now clear in the dark. Ropes hung from a few hands. No one had knocked. Naomi stepped out onto the porch. "If you came for me," she said, her voice carrying farther than she expected, "don't knock." The men slowed. Just a little. "Just take me." The words settled over the hill, heavy and still. Behind her, a step sounded. Caleb came to stand beside her, not in front. Beside. His shadow stretched long across the boards, touching hers where it fell. He looked down at the men, not raising his voice. "No one takes anything from this house." The wind moved through them all, and for a long moment, no one below seemed certain what to do next. The wind moved through the torches, bending the flames sideways. A few men shifted their weight. One lowered his rope without meaning to. Another cleared his throat like he had something to say, then thought better of it. Caleb didn't move. Naomi stood beside him, her hands loose at her sides, not clenched, not raised, just there, steady, as if she had already decided what she would accept. "You heard him," someone muttered from the back. The sound of boots against dirt followed. One step, then another. Not forward. Back. The crowd didn't break all at once. It thinned. Edges first. Men drifting away in twos and threes, muttering low, the fire in their hands dimming as distance took hold. No one apologized. No one looked up at the porch again. By the time the last torch dipped below the rise, the hill fell back into darkness. The wind stayed. Naomi let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. It came quiet, almost lost under the sound of the boards shifting beneath her feet. Caleb turned then. Not to her. Toward the door. "Come inside," he said. She followed. The house closed around them, the door shutting out what was left of the night. The lamp still burned low on the table, its light soft, unsteady. Neither spoke. Naomi crossed to the stove, added a piece of wood, adjusted the iron lid. The small, ordinary movements steadied her hands. Caleb stood near the doorway longer than needed, his hat still in his hand. When he finally set it down, he didn't sit. "You should leave in the morning," he said. The words landed without force, but they didn't miss. Naomi kept her back to him. "Because of them?" "Because of what comes next." She nodded once. He couldn't see it. "I figured as much," she said. Silence stretched between them, not empty, just full of things neither of them reached for. That night, the wind didn't let up. It pressed against the walls, found its way through the cracks, made the lantern flicker now and then. Naomi lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The room felt smaller than it had before. Or maybe it was just quieter in a way that made thinking harder to avoid. She sat up before dawn, packed what little she had. Not much. A folded dress, a tin comb, a cloth wrapped around a few dried roots she had gathered along the road. She stepped into the main room with her things in her hands. Caleb was already there, sitting at the table, same as the morning before. Same cup in front of him. This time empty. He didn't look surprised to see her. "You're up early," he said. "So are you." He gave a small nod. She set her things down near the door, not picking them up again right away. "I won't cause you more trouble," she said. "You did more than enough." Caleb's gaze stayed on the table. "That's not why I said it." She waited. He didn't fill the space. Outside, the first light of morning touched the ridge. Pale. Cold. Naomi reached for her bundle. "If I stay," she said slowly, "they'll come back." "They might," he answered. "And next time, they might not leave." That settled between them. Naomi tightened her grip on the cloth in her hands. "Then it's decided." She moved toward the door. Caleb stood. Not fast, not sudden, just enough to close the distance before she reached the handle. "If you leave," he said. She stopped. He didn't step in front of her, didn't block the door. "Does anything get better?" She didn't turn. The question hung there, not heavy, just honest in a way that made it hard to move past. Naomi let out a slow breath. "No," she said. She turned then, looked at him fully for the first time since the night before. "Does it for you?" Caleb's jaw shifted once. He didn't answer right away. "No," he said. The word was quiet. Certain. They stood like that, a few feet apart, the morning light growing stronger behind her, outlining the edges of her shoulders, the loose strands of her hair. Caleb moved first. Back to the table. He sat down, elbows resting lightly against the wood, hands folded together. The posture of a man who had carried something alone long enough to forget how to set it down. "When I was a boy," he said, eyes on the grain of the table, "I took a fever. Near took me with it." Naomi didn't move. "The doctor said I'd live," he went on. "But not the same as other men." His fingers tightened slightly. "Folks around here, they have ways of saying things without saying them." A short breath left him. "Word travels." Naomi stepped closer. Not all the way. Just enough that she could hear him without the space between them getting in the way. "They decided what I was," he said, "and I let them." The room stayed quiet. Then, after a moment that felt longer than it was, he asked it. "Am I truly barren?" His voice caught, just enough to mark it. "Or just not meant to be anything more?" He didn't look up, didn't expect an answer. Naomi stood there, her hands still wrapped around the cloth bundle she hadn't set down. She could have spoken. Instead, she crossed the distance. Slow, careful. She set the bundle aside on the table. Then she placed her hand over his. Not firm, not pressing. Just there. Caleb's fingers stilled beneath hers. For a moment, neither of them moved. The house held the quiet, the kind that didn't ask for anything, didn't rush what came next. He looked up then. Their eyes met. Not searching, not questioning. Just staying. The distance that had lived between them for days shifted. Not gone, just smaller. Naomi didn't pull her hand away. Caleb didn't turn his. Outside, the wind had settled. Inside, something else had begun to move. It did not rush. It did not announce itself. It settled in the space between them the way morning light finds a room, slow, certain, impossible to ignore once it arrives. Naomi did not pull her hand away right away. Neither did Caleb. The stove ticked softly as the heat shifted. Outside, a loose board tapped once against the side of the house, then went still again. He turned his hand under hers, not to take hold, just enough that their palms met. That was all. They did not speak of it that day, or the next. Life moved forward in the same small ways. Water drawn from the well, fences mended where the wind had worked them loose, meals set on the table at the same hour, eaten without hurry. But something had changed. He stayed a moment longer when she passed behind his chair. She did not step away as quickly when their hands brushed over the same cup. It was not sudden. It was not loud. It was steady. Weeks passed. The wind softened as the season turned. Grass pushed through the hard ground in thin, stubborn lines. Naomi worked the small patch behind the house, turning soil with a shovel that had seen better days. She pressed seeds into the earth one at a time, covering them with care. Caleb watched from the fence once, then again the next morning. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," she answered. "Still seems worth doing." He nodded, stayed a while longer than needed. The cough did not come as often now. When it did, it passed quicker. The lines in his face eased in ways he did not seem to notice. Naomi did. She said nothing. One evening, she stood by the table longer than usual, her hand resting flat against the wood. The room smelled of coffee and something faintly sweet from the kettle she had left to cool. Caleb came in from the yard, brushing dust from his coat. He set his hat down, paused when he saw her standing there. "You all right?" he asked. Naomi nodded, then shook her head once like she had changed her mind halfway through. "I need to tell you something." He waited. She did not speak right away. Her fingers curled slightly against the table, then flattened again. "I've been late," she said finally. The words sat there, quiet and plain. Caleb did not move. She lifted her gaze, met his. "I didn't want to say it wrong," she went on, "or too soon." A breath passed between them. "I think there's a child." The room did not change. The walls did not shift. The wind did not rise. But something inside him did. Caleb stood where he was, as if the ground beneath his boots had taken on a different weight. He looked at her, not past her, not through her, at her. Then he crossed the room, not fast, not slow. He stopped a step away, like he had at the beginning of everything between them. Then he sank down onto one knee. No words. His hand lifted, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then settled lightly against her stomach, as if he were touching something that might vanish if he pressed too hard. Naomi let out a breath that trembled once before it steadied. Caleb bowed his head. Not low, just enough that the brim of his hat would have shadowed his eyes if he had been wearing it. For a long moment, he stayed that way. When he finally looked up, there was something in his face that had not been there before. Not relief, not disbelief. Something quieter, deeper. "I thought that part of me was gone," he said. Naomi did not answer. She didn't need to. Word reached town faster than either of them intended. By the time Naomi stepped onto the street in Red Butte a week later, heads turned before she reached the general store. No one spoke at first. Then came the whispers, low, close, carried just far enough. She kept her eyes forward, counted her steps from the hitching post to the door. Inside, the store smelled of flour and lamp oil. The same man stood behind the counter, weighing out sugar on a scale that had likely never been wrong. He nodded once. Not unfriendly. Not warm either. Naomi set her list on the counter. Her hand rested over it a moment longer than needed. Behind her, a voice said, "That's Ward's place she's come from." Another answered, "So they say." A pause. "Men like him don't change overnight." Naomi's fingers tightened once, then stilled. The door opened again. Bootsteps crossed the floor. familiar, measured. Caleb stopped beside her. He did not look at the men behind them, did not ask what had been said. He simply placed his hand on the counter, close enough to hers that the space between them disappeared. "If you think she trapped me," he said, voice even, carrying without effort, "then you don't know what it feels like to be saved." Silence followed, the kind that leaves no room for reply. Naomi did not look at him right away. When she did, his gaze was steady, unmoved. He reached for her hand, not pulling, not claiming, offering. She placed hers in his. Outside, the wind moved along the street, lifting dust in slow, careful spirals. They walked out together. No one stepped in their way. No one spoke. Years later, the land around Stone Ridge held more green than it had before. A small boy ran along the fence line, his laughter carrying farther than the wind. He tripped once, pushed himself back up, and kept going. Naomi stood near the garden, a bundle of herbs in her hands, watching him without calling him back. Caleb leaned against the post, one arm resting easy across the top rail. He watched them both. Did not say much. He didn't need to. The boy turned, ran back toward the house, dust rising at his heels. Naomi glanced over her shoulder, met Caleb's eyes. There was no question left in them, only the quiet understanding of something that had already been answered. He wasn't empty. He just hadn't met her yet. "Do you want me to continue or revise any part?" He just hadn't met her yet. And maybe that's the part that lingers long after the dust settles, the quiet truth that some lives don't begin when they're supposed to. They wait. They stretch through empty years, through silence, through doors that never quite open, until one day someone walks in and doesn't leave. If you were standing where Caleb once stood, told who you were, what you lacked, what your life would never be, would you have believed anything different? And if you were Naomi, carrying more weight than anyone could see, would you have stayed when it got hard, or walked away before it had the chance to change you? There's something steady about the way their story unfolds. Not loud, not perfect. Just two people choosing, again and again, to remain, to trust, to build something where nothing was promised. Maybe that's what love looks like out there, on land that doesn't give easily. Not a rescue, not a miracle handed down, but a hand held out, and another one willing to take it. If this story stayed with you, I'd like to know where you're watching from. Just a town name is enough. And if you feel like there are more stories like this, quiet ones, the kind that find their way into your chest and stay a while, then you might want to stick around. There are still a few more waiting to be told.